You so much. Welcome, everyone. We want to thank everyone so much for coming out tonight and joining us in celebrating Black stories and voices. We are excited to be hosting this program virtually so we can reach many people and meet you where you are. My name is Megan Turner, librarian with the Pierce County Library System. Joining me tonight with facilitation duties is Laura Farrow, uh, coordinating librarian in Adult and Information Services. We also have Britannia Douglas, Adult Services Librarian, and Cassie De Santiago, Adult Services Specialist. We also wish to thank Tacoma Public Library for their generous support this evening. Their support has helped us bring these presenters to you tonight and to our in-person event that happened last Thursday. Please say hello to Tacoma Public Library. Jolynn, would you like to have a couple minutes?
Yes, thank you, Megan. So my colleague Malcolm and I just want to give a special thank you to Laura and Megan for including Tacoma Public Library in the two programs for Black Stories and Voices. I do want to talk about a few programs at Tacoma Public Library, but just wanted to note for people who may not know that if you live in a Pierce County service area, and don't have a library card with Tacoma Public Library, you can come and get a free library card in our system as well. So we'd love for you to visit one of our 8 locations, sign up for a library card with your photo ID. If you are already a Tacoma Public user, we do have a few updates. If you use our Wheelock branch, which is in the Proctor district, it is getting ready for a temporary HVAC closure that's going to be starting on Tuesday. So I just want that to be on everyone's mind. The more exciting update about our locations is our main branch downtown. It's been closed for a reimagining, and it did recently reopen on February 1st. So if you have not gone and visited that location, it has reopened with a very fancy maker space, 3D printing, laser engraver, sewing machines. And then we've also reimagined our second floor. So instead of that being collections for our library, it's a community hub. And so we have community partners on the second floor now. The Remakery, Tool Library, Right 253, and Toolbox Laboratory. So they are also doing their own programming on the second floor, but doing programming with us. If you are looking for additional fun things to do in our community, we will be hosting a monthly ukulele jam at that main library. It will happen on the first Tuesday of every month. So the very first one is this upcoming Tuesday, March 4th. And that will be happening from 6 to 7:30. If you really love spoken word theater, you should come and visit the Swayze branch on Wednesday, March 5th from 6:30 to 7:30. We'll have a multimedia program by Living Voices. It's called Homefront, Warfront, Fly for Freedom. And it's going to be highlighting the experiences of Black women and how they supported World War II, especially I think some untold stories that we're not as familiar with. Post that. And then just lastly, we do have a monthly program called A Gathering of Poets. If you all don't know Burl Battersby, he is the one who helped bring together the anthology called Voices of Tacoma. Typically, they meet at the Swayze branch, but in March, they're going to be at the Moore branch on March 18th from 6 to 7:30. People can come and bring their own writing to get critique, listen to what other people are doing, or to ask questions. But you can find all of this information on our website, which is Tacoma Library. Oops, I didn't get the G, but it's .org. And we will look forward to seeing all of you in our locations as well. And just thank you again for having us.
Thank you so much, Jolynn. Wonderful. Please check out TPL events. Um, If you were with us last Thursday, welcome back. We're excited to have you. If you missed it, I'm so sorry you missed an incredible event, but don't worry because returning from a week ago, Thursday night, is Amoah-Forson, with the addition of Taylor-Nicole and Eva Abram. Um, we wanted to give a quick shout out to Bonita Lee, who is not one of our artists tonight, but she was with us last Thursday. Um, we wanted to give her a shout out and plug her latest event. Please check out the chat for the link. The Pierce County Library System offers many programs and services for all ages, both in person and online. For more information on upcoming events, please see our website. The link is also up in chat. If you have any questions for staff or need technical assistance, please reach out to one of our friendly library staff working behind the scenes. Tonight we'll go forward as follows. After short introductions of our three panelists, they will do their artist share and tell, followed by Q&A session, which includes you and staff moderators. Please hold your questions until then. Also, a quick reminder that my apologies, this is an old script. At the end of the artist share and tell, the recording will end and the Q&A will not be recorded. The link to the recording will be emailed to all who are registered. Okay, without further ado, we would like to now introduce you to our wonderful panelists. Laura?
Thank you, Meejin and TPL. I want to go to TPL and do a field trip now. So anyone who wants to come with me, let me know. We're going to go ahead and start introductions. First up, we have Eva Abram. Eva grew up collecting rainwater. Now she collects stories. She grew up collecting rainwater for household use. That experience taught her that water is essential for life, and she believes the same is true of stories. This is why she named her company Rainwater Storytelling. Stories nourish human beings as rainwater nourishes the earth's plants and animals. Eva believes that the power of storytelling is universal. Stories are carried across the globe, connecting us with one another. They show us that we are alike and that how different cultures are different and interesting. The similarities and differences act as a bridge to bring us closer together. Eva is a native of New Orleans, Louisiana. She was born in New Orleans and grew up in a little town called St. Joe. Surrounded by both sets of grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins, Eva grew up being well looked after. Support from this tight community gave her a good foundation and a determined attitude. While growing up, she got glimpses and fragments of stories about Briar Rabbit. As she remembers, all she remembers is that he was smart. Eva listened as relatives told stories about their experiences and worked at work or encounters in their daily lives. The lessons seeped into her and shaped her. She moved to Seattle and attended high school and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Washington. Eva is also an actress and has performed in several theaters in the Seattle area. Her acting skills enhance her storytelling. Eva has been nominated for a Gregory Award for Best Supporting Actress and was nominated and won a Gypsy Rose Lee Award for Best Supporting Actress. Eva's mission is to help people connect to their humanity and to reach others through stories. Oh, thank you so much, Eva. We're excited to have you here this evening. Our next panelist, Kwabi Amoah-Forson. Kwabi is a humanitarian and influencer from Tacoma, Washington. Through various humanitarian campaigns, he has assisted those in need in his community and across the country. He strives to educate others about the true meaning of peace and foster dialogue on the subject through the Peace Bus. He has been featured on PBS television, King 5 News, Q13 Fox, and co-hosted last year's Northwest Emmys. 3 years ago, he was awarded the Tacoma Peace Prize and was invited to attend the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony in Oslo, Norway. Previously, he traveled to Ghana, West Africa on a humanitarian journey where he gave away food and resources to orphanages. Over the years, Kwabi has worked to help those in need with many humanitarian aid endeavors, while speaking to students, businesses, and organizations about the most important subject of all. Thank you so much, Kwabi. We're glad to have you back this week. And then our third panelist, Taylor-Nicole. Hi, Taylor. I like your plant, by the way, in the background. That's beautiful. Taylor-Nicole, who also goes by T, is a Black queer 20-something born and raised in Mississauga territory. I'm so sorry. You're going to have to correct me on that later. In Detroit, Michigan, and currently lives in Duwamish, Coast Salish, and Puyallup territory, or the Greater Seattle, Washington. Their cultural roots stem from West Africa, Turtle Island, North America, South Carolinas, Alabama, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, and of course their hometown of Detroit. Taylor is an artist and educator exploring a variety of mediums, including performing arts, which includes acting, voice acting, improv, dance, African drum, and visual arts, which includes film, painting, decoupage, clay, upcycling, and mixed media. She has nearly 15 years of experience working with youth of all ages, both in and outside the classroom. Taylor's goal in life is to add, is to add the art of play in everything that they do. Life is too short to be serious, Taylor says. I'll have to agree with you on that. Taylor was also in attendance, at our Black Stories and Voices program last week at University Place. So we appreciate you coming then and being a part of our panel now. Your support's been really, really great. So we are so glad to have Eva, Kwabi, and Taylor tonight joining us this evening. Would anyone like to start first? Any of our presenters would like to be brave and start first? Bobby, I think you started first at University Place, or
I don't mind being brave and starting first.
okay. Take it away, Taylor. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So my name is Taylor. I also go by T. I use any pronouns. I am Detroit born and raised, but I've been living in the Tacoma area for about a little less than a year. And I've been in the Seattle area for about 5 years. I'm very grateful to be here today. I am just want to first start us in grounding ourselves. Who here has typed something today? Raise your hand. If you have typed something, you can also use the emoji button at the bottom if that's available to you. If you have typed something, if you have sent a message or texted anything, if so, wiggle your fingers because those fingers are tired and exhausted. And so we're just going to go ahead and start with a little finger. I do a lot of theater and improv and acting and guided meditation. And so this just helps us ground ourselves. Again, we need to be more silly with some play. So we're just going to have our fingers wiggle. We can really stretch those fingers out. Roll your wrists if that feels comfortable for you. Which directions can you roll them in? Can you do it like double Dutch style? Can you roll them in one direction? Can you roll them the other? And wiggle those fingers again. Also, I want you to unlock your jaw. So open your mouth just a little bit. And it's okay. We're gonna do collaborative storytelling. So we're gonna get a chance to like make sounds and be silly. So it's okay that you're on mute, but I'm gonna trust that you are participating on your end and making those sounds. So go ahead and unlock your jaw. And give yourself a little massage underneath your jaw. If we keep a lot of tension up in here. And we're gonna do something really loosen it up. Pretend that you are holding on to bars. And I want you to shake and go. And then loosen your face up. Yes. Loosen your shoulders, shake your shoulders out. Yes. So I always want us to start off with rubbing our hands together, activate our magic. If your hands are warming up, that means it's working. Can you rub them faster? We have an amazing power of imagination and our voices. I believe that our voices and our bodies are instruments. There's so many different ways that we can make sounds, and I always love to explore that. So let's go ahead, and I want you to take a deep breath in with your hands on your chest. Deep breath in through your nose. And release the breath. Lower your shoulders. Another deep breath in. And this time when you release, I want you to hum it out. And then the next time, deep breath in. And I want you to hiss it out like a snake. Very good. And I always have everyone always just put their hands down on their, wherever they are on your neck or on your chest at the base of your throat. And you're going to follow me with a roller coaster. We're going to go hum, just hum regular, whatever that pitch is for you. There's no right or wrong. And when my hand goes up, your voice goes up. And down. Very good. Just shake it all out. Whatever feels good for you. So I am really excited to be here. I put my information in the chat, but I do a variety of things. My favorite thing that I like to do is storytelling. And we also have another storyteller here. So I'm so excited. I love hearing stories. Growing up was my favorite. I remember one moment of being able to hear my like first, second, and third grade teachers read stories to me in silly voices. They get to do silly voices, and they did all of the in the characters. And I really appreciated having just that play and imagination. Stories really come to life, and oral storytelling, telling things vocally, just really connects us and we're able to learn about the past, but also create new ideas and new futures and do things collaboratively. That's why I really love storytelling. So I do a variety of storytelling. I consider myself to be a griot. Can everyone say griot? And I'll put that in the chat. A griot is I'm going to say African diasporic word. I'm going to may use that word a lot, the African diaspora, because we come from Africa, but due to transatlantic slave trade being taken from our homes, we're spread out all over. And that means all over. That means that we're over in Southeast Asia, we're over in North America, what I call Turtle Island, we're going to Central America, we're spread out, London and the UK, all over the world. And though it makes us feel disconnected with our history in some ways, it also is really empowering to know that we're all connected. And I have stories that are similar and stories that are different, but there's always a little bit of similarity and connection that I can find in stories when I hear from others from all cultures. So I'm going to share a story that came from someone in Charleston, South Carolina. I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and back in December, I spent a whole month there and I loved it. I highly recommend if anyone wants to visit. Why Charleston, South Carolina? Well, remember I said that transatlantic slave trade, the African diaspora, people taken from their homes, Black people taken from their homes and forced to work. But I don't want to talk about it's important to always talk about the hard stuff, but I also want to celebrate joy and Black joy and celebration. And that's why we're going to talk about Black music. And that Black music taken from Africa and spread out all over the world when it landed in Charleston, South Carolina, because Charleston, South Carolina is the oldest port for transatlantic slavery. So when it's like the dock, when people are taken from their homes and they arrive on the boat, that was one of the first boats. And so these enslaved African people were the builders in many ways of this country hundreds of years ago. But again, this country has many, many, many stories, many, many histories of the Coast Salish and the Duwamish, Puyallup tribes. So but this story here, we're going to be talking about Black music, and written by Marcus, a maker who is a writer and the poet laureate in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was able to meet him in my journey, and I was able to learn about his story. And he wrote this children's book, and I was like, wow, this story would be amazing for me to share with others. And I will also put his information to the chat. King's book, I actually reached out to King's Books in the library and Pierce County Libraries, and they were like, yeah, we actually want to get this into our library system, and we actually want to get this book into King's Books. So this book is now locally available, or you can order online. But I love interactive storytelling. I'm just not going to sit and just read to you all. Because remember, we have that magical, magical power of imagination and story, and our bodies are instruments. So just take a minute and find a way to make sound with your body. What's one way you can make sound with your body? Take a minute to explore. What's the way you can make sound? I see some patting. I see some snapping. Maybe you do a hum. Try. I see some clapping. Maybe some people singing. Can you stomp? I'm going to trust that you're stomping. If you can hear my stomping, I always say if you can hit it, if you can tap it, it's a drum. So maybe it's the table in front of you. Maybe it's your body. This also is great to wake up your body too. So different ways to make sounds. There's so many different ways to make sounds with our bodies. And I'm going to ask you all to help me make sounds throughout this book that is called Black Music Is. We're going to learn, what is Black music? Does music have a color? Does music have a color? Think about it. What color do you think music is? Take a minute. Take 5 seconds to think about, if I were to say, what color is music? What color would you say? 5, 3, 2, 1. Hold that thought. I'm going to ask you at the end and see what you say. We'll get to type it in the chat. Black music is. I'm going to read it and then I'll zoom in closer. That way you can see the pictures, okay? Black music is the blues. The blues. Can you say the blues? The blues. It's Bessie Smith, the empress of analog emotion and homegrown sound, a renowned singer whose voice was profound. Can you say Bessie Smith and the blues? When you see these pictures, what feeling do you feel when you see blue music? You can type it in the chat if you want. Calm. I see that. I love that. You can say it to, if you're next to someone, you can say it to them. What color do you feel? The blues, it's B.B. King and his band, swinging with a personified guitar swing. Can you all make a little swing and tap and beat? Yes, B.B. King and his band, and Lazy Lester's Zydeco Rhythm, and Blues Swamp. It's Big Mama Thornton's hound dog, voice divine, and a rhythmic foot stomp. Can you do a rhythmic foot stomp? Can you stomp on a beat? What does that feel like? What does that beat going faster? You stomp on that beat. Yeah. Oh, ooh, Black music is hip hop. It's the grande breaks of De La Soul that takes us 3 feet high and rising. Mixtape soundscapes uncompromising. Record breaks spin of rhymes in a pen. Southern lingo and trap. Cyber rhapsody and boom bap. Can you say that? Boom bap. Yeah, that's hip hop. Beats and hi-hats. Can you say hi-hat? And hand claps. Can you do hand claps for me? Yeah, and hand claps. It's streams of Black thought and bass heavy flow. Ooh, hip hop. What colors do you feel when you see hip hop? When you hear hip hop? What feeling do you feel when you hear hip hop? What does it make you want to do in your body? Ooh, yes, in the chat, orange, speeding up, deep low beats. Yes, thank you. Ooh, Black music is the banjo. Can you try to make a banjo sound? It's like a guitar, but it has a little bit of a twang. Banjo. You say banjo. The Black music is the banjo. It's a lost history, untold by radio, sold from West Africa to the minstrel show. That banjos, these types of guitars. If you think of it culturally, in Southeast Asia to the sitar, there's so many different ways that the guitar has evolved, but it started off as that plucky sound banjo in West Africa. Ooh, Black music is our native daughters. and the harmonizing of history. It's listening to the voices that don't get publicity. It's Gus Cannon and his band of jugs, or clawhammer roots of Uncle John Scruggs. What do you notice in these pictures? And what do you feel when you see these pictures? What feeling of music do you think you'd get from this folk? Ooh, Black music is the melodies that we've heard on many plantations. That's that deep South for you. It's Elizabeth Cotton, a folk sensation. It's the fiddle and covers of Maple Leaf Rag, and Don Flemings, who now holds the flag. We're talking about some places that's way further south. We're in the Pacific Northwest right now in Seattle and in Washington and Tacoma in these lands, but we're talking way further south out from the Pacific Northwest. We're talking down south to where these roots that they're talking about in these plantations. Ooh, Black music is jazz. It's Alice Coltrane and her hands plucking sound. Ooh, Max Roach and his feet to the ground. And up and down between dust kick and snap. It's Shirley Scott's heart bop, boop bop, and flow in the air. This is jazz. Can you say bop, bop? Can you beat bop? Can you boop bop? Can you beat boop bop? Yeah, that's jazz. It's Micaiah McCraven and Jeff Parker channeling the cadence of Chicago's sky. I'm from Detroit, and Chicago's not too far from Detroit. Pushing the limit of improvisation and playing notes on the fly. Esperanza Spalding blending folk, rock, jazz, and soul. Because Black music is rock and roll. Can you do that? You say rock and roll. I've heard that rock and roll. Yes. What colors do you see and what feelings do you feel when you hear that rock and roll from Big Joni and the riot vibration and the genius of Prince and New Power Generation? It's Fishbone's feedback in full living color and Betty Davis's funk. That sounds like no other. All these musicians I'm naming, Big Joni, Prince, Fishbone's feedback, Betty Davis. Ooh, I can think of Jimi Hendrix when I think of rock and roll, Pacific Northwest Seattle native. It's the music of a people and a pulse in our hearts. Can you do a pulse in your heart? Yes. It's a sound, Black music. It's a sound that was built by Sister Rosetta Tharpe. We're talking about that gospel, not rock and roll. What do you see? What do you notice? What do you feel? Feel free to pop it into the chat. Maybe some of you may be saying, what is that? Some of you being like, I know exactly what that is. What do you know about that? Got some record players, yes. I'm going to read the author's note. Dear readers, I wrote this book as an opportunity for readers to learn about artists that they might not know. And if you know about these musicians, then it's my wish that Black music is a fun reminder about the power and depth of Black music. I encourage you to purchase music of each artist mentioned in this book. Spend time with each record, learn about the year the recording was released, or going back in time. Social context is really helpful when indulging in important musical works, especially from Black artists. Our sound is the heartbeat in the pulse of the world. Can you do that? Say, my sound is the heartbeat in the pulse of the world. My sound is a heartbeat in the pulse of the world. My sound is a heartbeat, pulse of the world. Yes. It's nearly impossible to consume any music today without hearing a note that has been sparked by a Black musician. So feel free to enjoy looking up some of these musicians. If we don't write about Motown music, James Brown, Stevie Wonder, Nina Simone, Ray Charles, Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, Beyonce, NWA, or the popular musicians, someone else will write about them. But there's so many more that you need to dig down deep into and consider the stories that are all around you and those stories that are rooted in music. So that's a little bit of the art. Yes, Roberta Flack. Yes. Feel free. Everybody take a minute and think about an artist, a Black musician if you can, preferably a Black musician, Black History Month. Think about an artist and feel free to pop it in the chat, any musicians that you wish to share. And it could be someone of the past. It could be someone of today. I'm going to type in Sly Stone. Yes, 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 yes. All right, so yes, yes. I'm going to type in a local one from Tacoma, Liv T, a Tacoma local. Awesome. And anytime when I finish your reading, I always want to end on a 1, 2, 3 clap, because our music, our sound is, it's vibration. It's what connects us all together. So we're going to count to 3 and we'll clap, and that'll be our closing. 1, 2, 3. Thank you all so much for sharing or for listening to the share of my story and the story of Marcus. I'm going to put his information into the chat.
Taylor, that was incredible. I so enjoyed that. Thank you so much. And I own that book. And I thanks to you and bringing it to my attention. There's no way I can read it to myself the way you did. So thank you for giving me a voice to that, because I can go back to this recording later and I'll replay what you just did. So thank you. Who would like to go on next? We've got Eva, or we can go with Kwabi, whoever would like to jump in.
I think I'll go next if Kwame doesn't mind. Okay, thank you. I didn't know we were going to tell a story, but I will tell a short one for you. Now, earlier, Taylor-Nicole talked about the African diaspora and that we're all over the world, everywhere, and we are. And there are things, because we are spread out, we look for things to connect us. And we have different kinds of things, music and so on. And this story is also about one of the ways we connect. It's a story that comes from the Ashanti people in Africa. There was 2 expert weavers, Nana Amayo and Nana Karagu. These men were very good friends, and they created a black and white cloth with a particular design that was worn by everyone, from the Ashanti king down to the lowliest apprentice. These 2 men had other responsibilities too. One of the things they did to get food for their family is to set traps in the Ashanti forest. So they had set 3 traps. They got up very early, way before daylight, to go check on their traps. They took their lanterns and went out into the forest to see if they had anything. To their great surprise and relief, all 3 traps were full of this animal they call grass cutters. So they collected their traps and headed back home. Amoah was in front and he stopped in his tracks. He said, Koragu, come, witness this small miracle. What was the miracle? A spider web. Now, of course, we've all seen spider webs before. These men had seen many spider webs, but they had not seen one with this particular design. You know, as weavers, they were very tuned in to this sort of thing. They were fascinated. They wanted to take it home. So Amoah began to detach the web from the banana leaf very carefully. He detached one part of it and detached another part of it. The web collapsed and stuck together. They were both devastated. So the two men went home, knowing that they would never see a web of that design again. By the time they got home, the sun was coming up, and Amoah's wife, Afia, had breakfast ready for them. The two men sat down and started to eat their breakfast very quietly. And that in itself was unusual because these two men, they always had something to talk about. But this time, they were very quiet and sullen. So Afia said to her husband, "What is wrong?" And Amoah's heart was still so broken that he couldn't talk about it. So Koragu said, "We found a web of such a fantastic design. And when we tried to bring it home to study it, well, it was destroyed. We will never see a web like that again." Afia said, "Yes, that is very unfortunate. But you can't see that web, but perhaps you can find the web weaver." Amoah perked up. He said, "Wife, oh, you're so brilliant, wife." Oh, and they hurried with their food and they rushed back out into the forest to try to find that banana tree. And they did find it. There it was, with a new web in the process of being weaved by this big, beautiful black and yellow spider. They watched intently, both saying, not out loud, but in their heads, "I want to take this home to study it for our work." But then they thought, "No, we have destroyed our home once. We will not do it again." So they stood there, watching, taking notes in their head, and the spider actually looked up at the men as if to say, "Watch this." And she began to do a dip and twist and turn and glide as she weaved. Dips and twists and turns and glides. And as she finished weaving, she looked back up at them. And the men said, now, I don't know if it's true. The men said that spider smiled, as if to say, "Did you get it?" And then zip, she was gone. The men rushed home with their notes, writing down the notes they had, drawing what they could remember, and they even redesigned their loom to try to imitate the dips and twists and turns and glides of that dance the spider did. And they ended up creating a whole new design in black and white cloth. But that particular design, only the Ashanti king was allowed to wear it. And the king only wore that design on special occasions. Now, in time, the men began to dye their threads with bold colors. And in time, everyone was allowed to wear that new cloth design, and they wore it on special occasions. And it is still true today that people in the African diaspora all over the world still wear this cloth on special occasions. And we call this cloth kente. And here's a small example of the kente cloth. I'm sure you've seen people wearing this kind of cloth. And that is where we get it from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. That was incredible. I didn't have that perspective. So before we move on to Kwabi, was there anything else you wanted to share in regards to how you became a storyteller?
Oh,
And
yes.
I read some of this in your background, and like I told you before the program started, it was just really inspiring. And all I can do is read what you wrote, but that's not my experience. So we're hoping you can share some of that for about 10 minutes or so until
Well,
we move
I'm
on to
not,
Kwabi. Yeah.
I'm not as much of a, I don't, I'm an introvert, believe it or not. So I don't think I can talk for 10 minutes about
Oh,
myself.
that's okay. If you're more comfortable, we can just move on with Kwabi.
No,
You're
I'll tell
working
you a
with
little bit.
librarians who are primarily introverts, also some of us, so we totally understand.
I will tell you that, yes, you mentioned that I grew up in Louisiana. And the wonderful thing about my upbringing is that, we didn't have a lot of money. That wasn't such a wonderful part of it. But the wonderful part of it is that I was surrounded by relatives, both sets of grandparents, cousins, aunties, uncles, and their babies. And of course, the kids that I went to school with weren't that far away either. So it was this wonderful little, how do you say, this little conclave of a Black community. And it was in Louisiana, down south, in this very tiny town outside of New Orleans. I say I was born in New Orleans and then immediately taken away to the country. So I grew up in this place that I was surrounded by people who really loved and cared for all of the children. And the kind of community I grew up in is that every adult had permission to act as if you were their child. And that includes being nice and feeding you if you happen to be at their house at dinner time. It also included them punishing you or telling you about yourself if you were trying to do something wrong. So they had no problems, no problems, teaching you right from wrong. And so that was one of the wonderful things I grew up with. And when I moved to Seattle, I was like 15 years old. But as I grew up and became more of an adult, graduated and all of that, I saw myself turning into those people. For an example, I was downtown one day in the middle of the day, and I saw these couple of Black little kids, not little, but they were like teenagers. And I said, "Why aren't you in school?" I don't know these kids from Adam. They don't know me from Adam. But they said, "Ma'am," and that was clue number one that I'm one of these, my elders. There is no school today. I said, all right then. So it's interesting to me that those kids, I don't know where they were brought up, but they had enough respect. They had been taught enough respect to say what they said in the way that they said it. And some other kid might have said something totally different. Like, who are you talking to? But fortunately, in my interactions with strangers, children, it has been very positive. I have not ever run into children that were disrespectful to their elders, and I'm glad to be recognized as an elder. So I appreciate having brought that love and caring with me through the people that brought me up. So, okay, I probably got off subject, but anyway, that's how I grew up. That's who I am. And that is really what led me to become a storyteller, because I have love for these children, not just Black children, but all children. And since I love history, those two kind of melded in my mind one night. I woke up with the idea of becoming a storyteller because I saw that as a way of teaching our children through stories, teaching them who they are, where we come from. And I see that as fundamental to helping us get where we're going. You have this information that teaches you self-esteem, the knowledge that teaches you how to respect yourself and your elders and your ancestors. That foundation the ancestors gave us is one of the things that helps keep us strong. And that's not just for the Black community, that is for every community. It is so essential. When it comes down to it, all of us, whether we're Japanese or American, ancestry, or whatever that Native American, whatever the ancestry is, it all comes down to connecting with where you come from and the values that were imparted by the people you came from. So that is my one of the goals I have as a storyteller, just connecting us and our humanity, regardless of what culture you came from. So that's me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Eva. I'm so glad I asked. And I saw Taylor nodding along with you for much of that as well. And after Kwabi speaks, we'll definitely have some time for you guys to interact with each other as panelists and kind of collaborate a bit and Q&A. But thank you again, Eva, for sharing that. That was beautiful. So we'll go ahead and move it on to Kwabi now. Thank you.
Miss Abram, a couple of things. What small town in Louisiana are you from?
I lived in Slidell for a while, just across Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans. And then I moved to St. Joe, which is about 6 miles north of New Orleans.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry,
nothing.
6 miles north of Slidell.
Okay, so nothing near Monroe. Nothing near Monroe.
No, not Monroe. But are you from Monroe?
My folks are from Monroe, so I'm half African and half African American, and my dad's from Ghana. So it's really interesting, how you're from Louisiana, and you gave a story about people in Ghana, and I'm actually Ashanti. I'm half, so yeah, cool stuff, stuff. And thank you both for being here and sharing. That's very inspiring. What's going on, everybody? My name is Kwabi Amoah-Forson. Definitely honored to be here. And I'm going to be telling a few stories of myself about my work and what I do for a living. I just so happen to have the greatest job in the entire world, and that's because I'm a humanitarian. I would ask people to put down in the chat what they think a humanitarian is, but it may be kind of lengthy, right? If you have an idea of what it is. But I'm just going to tell you what it is. And so a humanitarian is one who seeks the betterment of all people, no matter where you come from, your race, color, or creed. I'm out here trying to help people. Make sure person who cares about for humans, exactly, spot on, right? So that's what I do for a living. I know that there are humanitarians around the world trying to help people and deliver aid to people in need. And what I do is I do this locally. I do it across the nation, and sometimes I'm lucky and I'm able to do it in other countries. But I always wasn't a humanitarian. This is not something that I've been doing since I was a baby. It's something that has happened within the last 5-6 years. And before I knew I wanted to be a humanitarian, I was in grad school, right? Doing my thing. I'm in grad school for business. And while I'm there, I was feeling unfulfilled at the time. I think that many times we're told to go to school, and we should go to school. Don't not go to school. You should go to school. But while I was there, I didn't really know where I was going, and so I did something that a lot of young people don't do in our current day and age, and that's reaching out to an elder in the community for guidance. Instead of going to my parents, I could have gone to my parents, I could have gone to my friends, but I was like, these guys, they already know me. Maybe they have an idea of where I should go, but let me talk to someone who is kind of removed from me, who has sort of been watching me from afar. Maybe they have a different take on what I should do. So I reached out to an old academic advisor of mine named Dr. Peter Bacho. He's the GOAT, greatest of all time. He's an instructor at the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. He's still teaching today. He's in his 90s, I believe. And I'm pretty sure this happened, but I think he died and they revived him. Yeah, he's like that. He's like that. So I talked to Peter Bacho. I go to his office and I'm sitting down there and I'm like, Dr. Bacho, I'm struggling. I don't know why I am. I just can't seem to really get into school, but I'm getting bare minimum grades. What can I do? And he tells me to shut up. He tells me, he's like, Kwabi, you need to shut up. You're complaining too much. And I'm like, kind of like, whoa, this is kind of wild. Like, what, And he tells me to roll back some, calm down, and answer this question. And the question was, ask yourself, who do you want to be? And not what do you want to be? You said you could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor, you could be a teacher, whatever. Don't worry about that yet. Think about the principles you want to embody as a human being. When you walk into a room, what do you want people to see from you when you speak? These sort of things. And I thought, well, that seems too simple. Said, have you tried it? Try it out, see what happens. So I was like, all right, I'll try it out, I can't lose anything, so why not? So I took a weekend by myself and really thought, okay, who is Kwabi? Who am I, right? And I thought out of anything in the entire world, the thing I love the absolute most is seeing different people from different walks of life, races, colors, and creeds coming together for something positive. To me, that means everything to me. It means everything to me. So I thought, well, okay, I like seeing that in the world. Now, how are we going to do it? And we have this great thing in 2025, and I guess in the modern day of Google, right? So I was on Google looking up people involved in the peace movement, not the people of yesteryear, as they say. We know of Martin Luther King, we know of Gandhi, great people doing great work. But who's doing this now? And I came across this gentleman by the name of Brian Ha. And has anyone here in the Zoom heard of Brian Ha at all? If you have, raise your hand or do the little thing, the icon. And if you haven't, I'm going to tell you about him. So maybe no one has. If you do, I'm just going to keep on talking about it anyway. So, so Brian Ha was a peace campaigner from London, England. His heyday was like the early 2000s. And this gentleman was inspired. He was inspired by the military sanctions that were happening in the Middle East that the UK and the United States were putting on certain nations, causing infanticide. This is babies and children dying because of lack of sustenance. And so Brian had this brilliant idea of camping outside of Parliament Square in London, England, where they do all their litigation and lawmaking. And he camped outside, having this little peace camp with different posters talking about our humanity and how we're equal based off the fact that we're human beings. And he camped outside for 11 years. And Brian ended up dying out there. He had lung cancer and he died pursuing his mission, pursuing his passion. And I thought, whoa, if Brian can be out there for 11 years, the least I can do is something. I mean, I'm not the one to camp. I'm not a camper, and I've never really been into that. But I thought, well, I can do something. So I created these two posters. One said, love, peace, and justice for all. And the other one said, war is not the answer to violence. And I went out to Wright Park here in Tacoma. So this is 2017. I'm at Wright Park. Saturday morning, I got a little table. I got a radio to play some classical music, and I got my posters. And people come up to me, and they're like, what are you selling? And I'm like, oh, I'm not selling anything. I'd like to have a conversation with you about peace and learn about what peace means to you. And they were very skeptic. They're like, is this religious? And I'm like, it could be. I don't know. It depends on what you think. And after a while, people started feeling comfortable and sharing their thoughts and ideas of what peace meant. You know, if you ask anyone on the street what they want out of life, peace is typically in the top three things. And we don't talk about it enough, right? We want peace. We're more inclined to talk about war. But if you ask someone what they want out of life, they're not going to say war, right? So it was sort of this shift, this mental shift, and people started catching on. And so people started bringing their family, their friends, their loved ones. And, you know, Saturday mornings, there's like this peace event happening, you know, and it was really cool. And I did this for a couple of months. And then one Saturday morning, I'm out there doing my thing, and someone who was severely mentally ill, they came and attacked me. They ran up on me and they tried to break my poster. My posters were tough though, so they couldn't get through them. They couldn't get through them. The piece was too strong. It was too strong. But they tried to get me, but they couldn't. They couldn't get me. So they ended up running off, right? And the next Saturday, I'm kind of paranoid. I'm like, okay, I'm out here doing my thing, but is this guy gonna come out of nowhere and try to get me? So it was a bad instance, right? But what it did is it compelled me to walk around Wrights Park with my posters. And so I started walking around the park, talking to people. And then the next Saturday, I walked around Tacoma, having conversations with everyday people about peace, the most important thing. And then I went up to Seattle, did the same thing, went up to Vancouver, BC, and went to San Francisco. And while I'm in San Francisco, you know, I'm taking a few photos, folks, talking to people about peace, learning about what peace means. And I had a friend who was in the Air Force. His name's Austin, best friend of all time. I've known him since kindergarten. And he invited me. He was stationed in the Netherlands, and he told me, "Hey, I love what you're doing about with the peace thing. You should bring your posters to Europe and travel throughout Europe with me to talk to people about peace." And I was like, maybe, you know, I don't know about that, but maybe. And so I ended up asking my mom. I said, you know, Austin's thinking about having me go over there and talk to people about peace. What do you think? And my mom was like, don't do that. That's very dangerous. There's like these terrorist attacks happening in Belgium and in London. Don't do it. You're going to get hurt. I asked my dad, I'm thinking about going to Europe, bringing my posters. And my dad's from Ghana. He says, Kwabi, don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to get hurt. Think, you got to think. And I was like, okay, well, my parents don't want me to do it, but I'm stubborn, you guys. I'm stubborn. So I thought, well, I'll put them in my suitcase. If I get there and things are kind of crazy, then I won't do it, but at least I'll have them. And so I ended up going to Europe. And right when I get to my friend's house, he tells me, where are the posters? We got to go. So with my friend's support, I traveled all throughout Europe talking to people about peace. I even had a new poster in this endeavor where it had peace in a bunch of different languages. So if I went to a country that didn't speak English, at the least they would know why I'm there. And so I did this work. This is 2017, 2018. And I came back home and I thought, well, what's next? I got this knowledge of the idea of peace, and where do we go from here? And so I thought of researching, because we have Google still, right? It's still around. And I'm on Google and I'm doing some research, people doing peace stuff. And I came across this guy named A.B. Nathan. I don't know if anyone's here heard of A.B. Nathan at all. And if you have, that's cool. But if you don't, I'm going to tell you. Okay, so A.B. Nathan was an Israeli humanitarian, and his heyday was like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He was best friends with John Lennon. And this gentleman was all about peace and helping people. And he had a ship in the Mediterranean Sea called the Peace Ship. The Peace Ship. And the ship had a radio station on it. And he'd play good music, always good vibes. And he'd invite people from around the world to come to his ship and have conversations and dialogue about peace. And I fell in love with AB's mission. And I thought, well, if he has a ship, I'm going to have a plane. And that's when I decided to take flight lessons in 2018 to eventually become a peace pilot. But I'm still in grad school, you guys. So I was broke. I had no money. So I took like 4 lessons and it cleaned me out. So I thought, well, I can't be a pilot just yet, but I do have my income tax money. It's coming through. What if I could use this money to get a car or a van and turn that into a vehicle for peace? So I was on the internet, scouring through the internet, looking at people who had different vehicles. I knew it needed to be unique so it would stand out. and I came across this 1988 Mitsubishi van from this guy named Jason in Vashon Island, this hippie guy. Jason is an amazing guy. So he has this van. I hit him up and I'm like, Jason, I want to buy your vehicle and dedicate it to peace. And he's like, Kwabi, I would love nothing more, man, than for you to have my vehicle. But I got to sell it to you. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I bought the vehicle from Jason. I painted it blue, put Peace Bus on the sides, and started driving it around town. The idea was just that people would see it and they may be inspired to, I don't know, get involved in the peace movement, have a better day, treat people better, whatever, you know. And as I'm driving it around, I realized that there's a spot in the Peace Bus where there's supposed to be seats, but there's absolutely nothing. There's just a hollow space. And that's when I decided that it's not enough just to talk about peace. That's cool. People talk about peace all the time. People talk all the time. But I want to put this peaceful atmosphere into action. And that's when I decided I was going to be a humanitarian and help people in need, right? And I started delivering goods to people on the street. And my first campaign, I've done many campaigns over the years, but my first one was a sock drive. And I do want to tell that story, but I want to tell a different one that happened to me recently, and then I'll go back. So my first campaign was a sock drive. That was in 2019. Going full circle, this last Christmas, I did a sock drive called Peace Stockings. And my idea was to at least make sure that everyone in Tacoma and in the greater Tacoma area had a fresh pair of socks for Christmas. So me and my family, we went around and we delivered over 5,000 pairs of socks to people experiencing homelessness here in Tacoma and, you know, in the outskirts of town, these sort of things. And on any given day, there's about 4,300 people experiencing homelessness in Pierce County. So I'd like to think that we made a big impact. And after Christmas, I still had a few socks left, you know, here and there, just some, you know, that I had left over. And I'm driving late at night. I'm coming back home. And a homeless man on the street, he waves me down. He almost runs into my car. He's waving me down. And so I hit the brakes and I roll the window down. I'm like, what's going on, man? And he's like, hey, man, do you got any of those socks? And I was like, oh, yeah, I got a few left. Just hold on a minute. So I go and I reach back. I get a few pairs of socks and I hand him 2 pairs of socks. And as I'm handing it to him, he gives me $3. And I'm like, sir, I don't need any money. It's all good. And he's like, no, I know that you help people. I know you. And I know that you help people. I know that this money is going to go towards some people that need help. And at first I thought, I'm not going to take his money. But I realized in his eyes, I was looking at him and I realized he was earnest and he wanted to help. He wanted to be a humanitarian just like me. So I took his money and he said he appreciated me. He appreciated the work. And he hopes that I can help more people. And that moment really resonated with me enough for me to tell you guys today. And I think it's just a testament to something small. We're talking about socks, you guys. Right. And to have it change someone's perspective or to inspire someone to give is everything. And it's also, I mean, having a fresh pair of socks is also impactful as well. You know, you put on a fresh pair of socks, you feel like a new person. One of my first campaigns I did was called Journey to the Mexican Border, where I took my Peace Bus and a few of my friends. And in 2019, as you guys may know, there's a lot in the media about the immigration crisis. And we were seeing kids in cages, families like being torn apart. And this continues on today. I don't know what we're going to do in regards to immigration reform. If anyone has any ideas, I would love to hear. I've been asking politicians. I was on TV yesterday or the day before yesterday. And while I was in the room before you get on, the green room kind of thing, there was a politician there. And I was asking her, hey, what do you think the solution is in regards to immigration, you know? And she really didn't have a solution. She thought of right to work, which is an interesting thing. But we'll talk about it later. But yeah, so I had this idea of taking my Peace Bus and traveling down to the border of Mexico to interview Border Patrol agents about the immigration crisis, which is insane, right? But I thought I could do it. So I made a post online telling everyone that I was going to take my Peace Bus and deliver socks and blankets to people in need all around through California. and eventually, hopefully, meet with the Border Patrol. So I call the Border Patrol up, I tell them who I am, and they say that I can't interview them. Like, I'm not even a news station. Why would I think I could even come to their headquarters and interview them? And they hang up on me. But as I told you guys before, I'm a stubborn man. So I thought I'm just going to go anyway. And so me and my friends, we raised funds, and it turned out we were actually going to be able to take this trip. And so we drove down through California, giving out socks and blankets to people in need. I met with a gentleman by the name of Michael Nagler, who is one of the first professors of nonviolence in the United States. Got to talk with him, amazing conversation. And when I was in LA, the host families that we stayed with, one of the host families said, you should call the Border Patrol again, see what they have to say. And so I called them up again, asked them if I could interview them. They said no, but before I could hang up the phone, they said, well, what's this Peace Bus thing? And I said, I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you about it. So I basically gave them the pitch. I have this vehicle. I use it as a way of having conversations and dialogue about peace, and I use it to help people in need. And they said, well, some of the guys at the station want to see it. Can you send us a photo of it? So I sent them a photo. We hang up, and an hour later, they called back and they said, hey, can you bring the bus down to the station tomorrow? I said, yes, I definitely can. And so the next day, brought the Peace Bus down to the San Diego Border Patrol headquarters, literally knocked on the door. Two of the officers come out, and they're not even looking for me. They're not checking for me. They're like, where's the bus at? So they come over and they look at the bus and they're like, wow, this is really cool. Why did you guys come out here? And I was like, I came to interview you guys about the crisis. So they said we couldn't interview them, but they said that they would allow us to go on patrol with them. So we get into the patrol car and we're driving on the border of Mexico, and we're sparking up, conversation. And after a while, I felt comfortable to ask them again. They agreed, and I actually got to interview them about the immigration crisis. And one takeaway from this, one huge takeaway, was that out of anything, the biggest issue happening at the border was that it was a humanitarian crisis above anything. That most folks coming in from the border weren't doing drugs, they weren't criminals, they were everyday people seeking a better life, needing food, clothes, and shelter. And this is something that I never heard in the media, whether it was liberal media or conservative media, which is very strange to me. I believe that having real conversations and real interactions with people creates solidarity and really debunks a lot of misinformation that's in the world today. Yes, I'd like to tell you about another campaign I did called Santa's Sleigh. This happened in 2020. And as we know, in 2020 was a rough year. It's when COVID came around. People were losing jobs, losing work, everyone was, it was like an economic downturn. And I thought, well, what can I do to brighten up the spirits of the people in Tacoma, the greater Tacoma area? And I had this crazy idea of being Santa Claus for the city of Tacoma, but the real Santa Claus, the real deal. So I thought, well, I'm going to invite all the youth, 12 and under, to send me letters about how they've been helping their families, about love and peace and togetherness, this sort of thing. And they can ask me for any gift whatsoever, as long as it was $50 and under, and I'd get it for them. And this really resonated with the people. People donated. And every day I'm on Amazon buying gifts, right? This is fall of 2020. I'm in my house buying gifts. My apartment becomes filled with gifts, hundreds of gifts, right? There was a girl who even wanted a hamster. So a hamster lived with me for 2 weeks. It was wild. Yeah, it kept me up. It was on the wheel all night. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so there was that. And there was even a girl who wanted a pan, which I was very curious about. And then UW, the social work department of UW, helped me package all the gifts into a sack for each family. And on Christmas Eve at 4 p.m., I dressed up like Santa Claus, filled the Peace Bus full of gifts. I had a rental truck, filled that full of gifts, and my friends dressed up like elves. And we delivered to over 150 families in one night. It was insane. Would never do it again, but it was very impactful. That girl who wanted the pan, it was like 3:30 in the morning, and we pull up to her house, all the lights are on. And I'm like, they waited for this. And the father's already at the doorstep, and he's welcoming me into his house. And the aroma, there's just tons of good food smell in the house. I'm like, you guys have been cooking too. And it was an Indian family. And I give the gift to the daughter. She's like 5 years old or something. And she's opening up the gift. The father, he comes towards me and he's like, we have a restaurant in town, and because of COVID and what's been going on, we're not too sure if we're going to be able to keep the restaurant. But my daughter, she wants to be a chef at our restaurant. That's her dream, and this is her first pan. So I got to see her open up the pan, and she runs to the kitchen and she's trying to figure out how to cook, but she doesn't know what she's doing. It was really cool. It was a really cool moment. Again, it was just a pan, but she'll never forget that moment, and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. And so I want to encourage people with their skills or whatever they have to try to utilize that to help people and to give to people. It doesn't have to be big. I think oftentimes we get caught up with the bureaucracy of politics, or maybe thinking that we can't make any change, but man, just to see someone's world change with a pan or a pair of socks is everything. Yeah. In 2023, was it? I received the Tacoma Peace Prize. And when you receive this prize, I didn't even know there was a thing before I received it. It was pretty wild. And it's typically given to someone who has spent their entire lives doing work for peace. And they decided to give it to me. I was the youngest person to ever receive it. And when you receive the award, they send you to Oslo, Norway to attend the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, which is absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. And I want to tell you guys something that was really inspiring while I was there. When I was there in Norway at the Nobel Peace Prize, there's a hall before the main presentation space, right? And in that hall, they have world leaders, they have celebrity people. People are there, right? All the, famous and rich people are there. But also there's everyday people who are invited from around the world to come to the Nobel Peace Prize because they utilized their gift to help people. There were bricklayers there, like an actual bricklayer, right? Or teachers, PE teachers, physicians, people who had a story of how they've done things to help others, whether there was a person who runs a clinic and they made things more affordable for healthcare so that people who were experiencing poverty could get the help they needed. Or, the bricklayer was building houses for people for free. So I say that to say that whatever you do, you can always do something to help people in need. And in that way, we're all humanitarians. And I just really believe that. And that's basically the end of my presentation. Thank you.
It's a great way to end we've got applause going on. I want you to put that quote in the chat. What you just said, that was pretty amazing.
I said something?
You said something brilliant about everybody can be a humanitarian, so you've set the bar pretty high, but I mean, anybody who wants to help anybody is, essentially a humanitarian. So that was really great. I want to thank you guys all for sharing your stories and for sharing stories about your stories and stories that may not be about your stories. So, this is what tonight was about, Black stories and voices. And